What if everything you've been taught about becoming a good person is actually keeping you from discovering your life's true purpose? What if the very traits you're most ashamed of, your anger, your selfishness, your ruthless ambition, are actually the keys to unlocking your greatest potential? Before we dive deep into this, hit that like button if you're ready to challenge some uncomfortable truths about yourself, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because we're about to explore territory that most people are too scared to enter. Here's something that's going to mess with your mind. Carl Jung discovered that the aspects of yourself you've spent your entire life trying to hide, deny, and suppress, what he called your shadow, aren't obstacles to overcome. They're dormant superpowers waiting to be integrated. Think about it. You've been walking around with one arm tied behind your back, wondering why you feel so disconnected from your authentic self, why your life lacks that sense of deep purpose and meaning you crave. You know that nagging feeling that you're not living as your real self? That sense that you're playing a role, wearing a mask, being who others expect you to be rather than who you actually are? That's because you've been rejecting half of your personality. You've been trying to be a saint when what the world needs is your full, complex, beautifully flawed humanity. And here's the kicker: the people who've found their true calling, who seem to have that magnetic authenticity you admire, they're not the ones who've eliminated their dark side. They're the ones who've learned to work with it consciously. They've stopped running from their shadow and started mining it for gold. So stick with me until the end of this video, because I'm going to show you exactly how to do shadow work that actually transforms your life, not just makes you feel better temporarily. We're going to explore practical techniques that'll help you discover gifts you never knew you had, hidden in the very parts of yourself you've been trying to fix. And by the time we're done, you'll understand why your dark side isn't your enemy. It's been your guide all along, trying to lead you home to who you really are. You know that uncomfortable feeling when someone calls you out on something you don't want to admit about yourself? That sudden defensiveness, that quick, "No, I'm not like that" reaction? Well, my friend, you've just bumped into your shadow. Carl Jung wasn't talking about some mystical darkness when he coined this term. He was describing the most practical psychological reality you'll ever encounter. Your shadow is simply the collection of traits, desires, and aspects of yourself that you've learned to hide, deny, or push away because they don't fit the image you want to project to the world. Think about it this way. From the moment you were born, you started getting feedback about what was acceptable and what wasn't. Maybe your anger got you in trouble, so you learned to suppress it. Perhaps your ambition was labeled as greedy, so you started downplaying your drive to succeed. Or maybe your sensitivity was seen as weakness, so you built walls to hide it. Each time you pushed away a part of yourself, that piece didn't disappear. It went into your psychological shadow waiting in the wings. Here's where it gets interesting though. Your shadow isn't just a dumping ground for bad stuff. It's actually holding on to some of your most powerful qualities, the ones that scared other people or didn't fit their expectations of who you should be. That aggressive energy you've been ashamed of? It might contain your natural leadership abilities. That selfishness you've been trying to kill? Could be your healthy sense of boundaries and self-worth. Your shadow work isn't about becoming a nicer person. It's about becoming a more complete one. The shadow operates like a psychological blind spot. You can see everyone else's flaws crystal clear, but your own? They're invisible to you because they're sitting right in that spot you refuse to look at. And here's the kicker. The more you deny these aspects exist in you, the more they'll show up in your life in ways you can't control. They'll slip out in moments of stress, project onto other people, or sabotage your best efforts when you least expect it. But what if I told you that learning to work with your shadow could unlock potential you never knew you had? Let's be brutally honest here. We hide from our dark side because we're scared to death of being rejected. As children, we learned that certain parts of us got love and approval, while others got disapproval, punishment, or worse, indifference. So we did what any smart kid would do. We buried the unacceptable parts and amplified the approved ones. The problem is, we never learned that this was just a survival strategy, not a permanent life sentence. Your family, your culture, your religion, They all handed you a blueprint of who you're supposed to be. And anything that didn't fit that mold, into the shadow it went. If you grew up in a household where anger was forbidden, you learned to smile through your rage. If ambition was seen as selfish, you learned to downplay your dreams. If being emotional was labeled as weak, you built a fortress around your heart. Each rejection of a natural part of yourself created another layer of your shadow, and another barrier to discovering who you really are. But here's what nobody tells you: that fear of your own dark side is actually keeping you small. You're walking around with one arm tied behind your back, trying to succeed with only half of your psychological resources available. It's like trying to drive a car with the parking brake on. You might move forward, but you'll never reach your full potential. The energy you're spending on maintaining this false image of yourself could be channeled into creating the life you actually want. The crazy part is, the very traits you're hiding might be exactly what the world needs from you right now. Your suppressed anger could be the righteous indignation needed to fight injustice. Your hidden selfishness could be the healthy self-advocacy required to set boundaries and protect your energy. Your buried arrogance could be the confidence needed to take bold action on your dreams. But you'll never know if you keep running from these aspects of yourself, instead of learning to integrate them consciously. Here's something that'll blow your mind. The things you judge most harshly in yourself often contain your most valuable gifts. I'm not talking about feel-good psychology here. I'm talking about practical psychological gold that's been sitting in your shadow, unused and unrecognized. Think about the qualities you've spent your whole life trying not to be. Now, what if those very qualities, when channeled properly, could become your greatest strengths? Let me give you a real example. Say you've always been ashamed of your selfishness. Maybe you were raised to believe that thinking about your own needs was wrong. So you became the ultimate people pleaser, always putting others first, never asking for what you want. But here's the twist. That selfishness you've been hiding? It's actually your natural ability to advocate for yourself, to recognize your worth, to set healthy boundaries. Without it, you're just a doormat with a saint complex, wondering why you feel so empty inside. Or maybe you've been running from your aggressive tendencies because someone once told you that nice people don't get angry. So you smile through everything, avoiding conflict at all costs. But that suppressed aggression? It's your natural drive, your competitive spirit, your ability to fight for what matters to you. Channel it consciously, and it becomes the force that helps you overcome obstacles and protect what you love. Keep suppressing it, and it'll leak out in passive-aggressive behaviors that poison your relationships. The shadow doesn't just contain negative traits that need to be managed, it contains disowned aspects of your personality that could revolutionize your life if you learn to work with them. Your hidden arrogance might be confidence waiting to emerge. Your secret ruthlessness could be the decisive action you need to cut toxic people from your life. Your buried wildness might be the creative expression that's been suffocating under layers of appropriateness. But none of this power is available to you while you're busy pretending these parts of you don't exist. Want to know the fastest way to discover your shadow? Pay attention to the people who trigger you most. Those folks who just rub you the wrong way, who make your skin crawl with their behavior. They're not just random annoyances. They're walking mirrors, reflecting back the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. Jung called this projection, and it's one of the most powerful tools for shadow work you'll ever encounter. Here's how it works. When you have a strong emotional reaction to someone else's behavior, especially if it's disproportionate to the situation, you're usually looking at a disowned part of yourself. That coworker who's too aggressive? Check to see if you've been suppressing your own assertiveness. That friend who's so selfish. Maybe you've been denying your own needs for so long that seeing someone prioritize themselves feels threatening. The intensity of your judgment is often proportional to how much you've rejected that quality in yourself. But here's where it gets really interesting. You don't just project your negative traits onto others. You also project your positive ones. Ever met someone and immediately thought, wow, they're so confident/creative/successful? You're not seeing something foreign. You're seeing a potential that exists within you, but hasn't been fully owned or expressed. The qualities you most admire in others are often the very qualities your shadow is holding on to, waiting for you to claim them. This mirror effect happens in romantic relationships too, and it explains why we often attract people who seem to embody what we're missing. The quiet person attracts the loud one. The organized person attracts the spontaneous one. At first, these differences feel exciting and complementary. But over time, they start to irritate us, and that's when the real work begins. Instead of trying to change your partner, what if you looked at what they're mirroring back to you about your own disowned aspects? Alright, enough theory, let's talk about how you actually do this shadow work. The first technique is what I call emotional archaeology. When someone triggers a strong reaction in you, instead of immediately judging them or defending yourself, pause and ask, what is this showing me about myself? Write it down, be specific. If someone's arrogance bothers you, don't just note they're arrogant. Dig deeper. What exactly about their arrogance triggers you? Is it that they take up space confidently while you shrink? Is it that they assert their opinions while you stay quiet? The second technique is the dialogue method. Once you've identified a shadow aspect, have a conversation with it. I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. Set aside some time, grab a journal, and literally write a dialogue between your conscious self and this rejected part. Ask it questions. Why are you here? What do you need? What gifts are you trying to give me? You'll be amazed at what emerges when you stop fighting these aspects and start listening to them. Here's a powerful one, the integration practice. Instead of trying to eliminate shadow traits, find healthy ways to express them. If you've been suppressing your anger, find constructive outlets. Maybe it's time to speak up about injustices you see, or set firmer boundaries with people who take advantage of your kindness. If you've been hiding your ambition, start owning your desire for success and taking concrete steps toward your goals. The key is conscious expression rather than unconscious suppression. The final technique is what I call shadow interviewing. Ask your closest friends and family members to honestly tell you about patterns they see in your behavior that you might be blind to. This takes courage because you're asking them to point out your blind spots. But these conversations can be goldmines for shadow work. Often, the people closest to us can see our disowned aspects more clearly than we can, especially the ones we've been unconsciously acting out without realizing it. Here's where shadow work gets really exciting. When you start integrating these disowned parts of yourself, something magical happens. You begin to see patterns and themes that point directly toward your authentic life purpose. The qualities you've been running from often contain clues about what you're meant to contribute to the world. Your shadow isn't just personal baggage to clean up, it's a roadmap to your most meaningful work. Think about it. The things that trigger you most about the world are often pointing to problems you're uniquely equipped to solve. If injustice makes your blood boil, maybe you're meant to be an advocate or activist. If you can't stand inefficiency, perhaps you're a natural systems optimizer. If superficiality drives you crazy, you might be called to bring more depth and authenticity to whatever field you enter. Your shadow reactions aren't random. They're showing you where your passionate engagement with life wants to emerge. But here's the key. You can't fulfill your purpose from a place of unconscious reaction. If you're driven by unintegrated shadow material, you'll burn out, become bitter, or create more problems than you solve. The person who fights injustice from unprocessed rage often becomes self-righteous and destructive. The efficiency expert who hasn't integrated their own perfectionism becomes a tyrant. True purposeful action comes from integrating your shadow consciously, so you can channel its energy skillfully rather than being possessed by it. When you stop spending all your energy maintaining a false image and start embracing your whole self, you free up tremendous creative force. The authenticity that emerges from shadow integration is magnetic. People can sense when someone is operating from their full power rather than a sanitized version of themselves. This authenticity becomes the foundation for work that truly matters, relationships that are genuinely intimate, and a life that feels deeply satisfying rather than just socially acceptable. The ultimate goal of shadow work isn't to become a better person by some external standard, it's to become a more complete person by your own authentic standard. When you stop fragmenting yourself into good and bad parts, when you stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not, something profound shifts. You start operating from a place of integrated wholeness that's far more powerful than any carefully constructed persona could ever be. Living as your whole self means owning all of your qualities, the ones you're proud of and the ones you've been ashamed of. It means recognizing that your anger can be righteous, your selfishness can be self-care, your ruthlessness can be discernment, your arrogance can be confidence. It doesn't mean acting out every impulse, it means having conscious access to your full range of human qualities, so you can choose how to express them skillfully. This integration creates what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are rather than who you think you should be. And here's what's beautiful about this process. When you stop rejecting parts of yourself, you also stop projecting them onto others. You become more compassionate, not because you're trying to be good, but because you recognize the full spectrum of human nature in yourself. You can see others' flaws without being triggered because you've made peace with your own. The person who has done this inner work becomes unstoppable in a quiet, grounded way. They're not performing goodness, they're embodying authenticity. They're not trying to be perfect, they're choosing to be real. And in a world full of people wearing masks and playing roles, this kind of genuine presence is revolutionary. It gives others permission to drop their own acts and show up as they really are. That's not just personal transformation, that's how we change the world, one integrated human being at a time. So here's the million-dollar question. What shadow aspect have you been running from that might actually be your greatest untapped strength? As you've been listening to this, something probably stirred inside you, maybe a recognition, maybe a resistance, maybe both. That's your shadow talking, and it's time you started listening. Here's what I want you to do right now, while this is still fresh. Think of someone who really triggers you, someone whose behavior makes you react strongly. Write down exactly what bothers you about them. Now, here's the hard part. Ask yourself how that same quality might exist in you, even if it's buried deep or expressed differently. This isn't about self-attack, it's about self-discovery. Your trigger is your teacher, showing you a disowned part of yourself that's ready to be integrated. But don't do this work alone. Hit that like button if this video challenged you to look at yourself differently. Because when you like and share content like this, you're telling YouTube to show it to other people who are ready for this level of inner work. You're literally helping build a community of people who choose authenticity over approval, growth over comfort, truth over pleasant lies. And listen, if you found value in this deep dive into shadow work, you need to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. Because here's what I'm building with this channel, a space where we don't just talk about surface-level self-help fluff. We go into the depths of what it actually takes to transform your life. We explore the uncomfortable truths that most content creators won't touch because they're too busy trying to be likable. I want to hear from you in the comments. What's one shadow aspect you're finally ready to stop running from? Maybe it's your anger that you've been calling bad when it's actually your power. Maybe it's your selfishness that you've been suppressing when it's really your healthy boundaries wanting to emerge. Share your insights, because your vulnerability gives others permission to be real too. Share this video with someone who's ready to stop pretending to be perfect and start embracing their full humanity. Because the world doesn't need more people trying to be saints, it needs more people brave enough to be authentically, complexly human. Your shadow work isn't just personal healing. It's how we collectively evolve beyond the superficial personas that are suffocating our society. Keep doing the inner work. Keep questioning everything you think you know about yourself. And remember, your darkness isn't your enemy. It's been your guide all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to follow it home to who you really are.